On this episode of the Futures in Digital Learning podcast, we bring you a conversation with Tracy Balduzzi from Syracuse University,
Informal learning can happen inside the classroom and outside the classroom.
Reggie Jackson from Northwestern University,
I think one of the things we try to do in some of our classes is try to keep it fresh.
and Amanda Major from the University of Central Florida
Informal learning has a lot to do with social emotional development.
about the importance of informal learning. Join us as we discuss building community, student autonomy, and adding some spontaneity to online courses. Hello and welcome to the Futures in Digital Learning podcast. This is season 3, episode 3. We've had a little bit of a hiatus, but we're back with season 3. My name is Adam Davi. I am an instructional design manager at UCAT at the University of Arizona, and I'm here once again with my co-host Brian Hale. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Adam, welcome back.
Thank you. And welcome back to the viewers as well. We're excited to bring you today a conversation about informal learning. And this conversation came about as a result of a presentation I saw at OLC Accelerate last fall. And I'm so excited to bring the presenters here to talk with us. We have Reggie Jackson from Northwestern University, Tracy Balduzzi from Syracuse University, and Amanda Major from the University of Central Florida, who I'm thrilled to have on and talk about their research and the topic of informal learning. So welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So let's just, get right into it and start with, what is informal learning? Like how would you define that?
Sure. Thanks for asking, Adam. From what we've uncovered is definitely unstructured. It's spontaneous. It kind of happens on the fly. Sometimes there aren't even goals related to it. It's experiential in that, you kind of go through it somehow related to the real world, if not a real world experience in itself. It requires some sort of an engagement, like some sort of doing or interacting with. And this is a component that's sometimes missed, but I believe is important because some of the learning could be missed otherwise. The part where you kind of think about what you learned, the reflexivity part.
Okay.
What did I just get from that experience? That part.
That's cool. So I love the relevance to the real world part, because I think that's really important for students now to kind of see, take what they're learning and be able to apply it, right? And see that. So, how do you, I guess, like how do instructors work this in to their course, or does it just come about naturally? Like what did you find as you were looking at informal learning to, how did it show up in courses?
Yeah, it can just happen naturally. Reggie has a great bit of experience with this. So
Yeah, we teaching a class on learning theories, and so we decided to just kind of veer from the traditional learning theories and just put a module in on informal learning. And there's actually a really interesting module because we actually ended up getting a woman who was one of the leaders in the study of informal learning. She came to be a guest speaker, and then students, they really enjoyed it too because they had a chance to talk about some things that happened in their lives related to informal learning, like how did this happen, how did that happen, kind of thing. And then they would just tell us like, hey, what do you think about informal learning? They gave us like examples of things about how things happen for them, but where they were when they did, when they learned something informally. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Right. Cool. Okay. So you give, I guess that goes back in, to that reflection piece, right? Is, how do we give space for students to reflect and kind of time to kind of think about those experiences as well, which I'm a big fan. Oh yeah, go.
I'll add briefly, it can be a little bit more intentional, just giving that space like you mentioned.
Okay.
Or it could be totally whimsical, like what happens before and before the class starts, what happens on break, what happens after they heard the lecture and they're inspired by something.
Yeah. So tell me like a little bit about, what inspired you all to look at informal learning? I know Reggie said you're teaching that class about learning theories, and I love that you fit this in. But what kind of brought up this idea?
Yeah, absolutely. So Tracy here. Actually, interestingly, what inspired us initially was so Amanda and Reggie used to meet monthly anyway after going through the leadership thing with OLC, the leadership cohort, and then they brought me in, and we just started like meeting monthly and just talking about everything and anything under the sun, like honestly. And so when OLC came about, we're like, we should really like put forth a topic. Everything we've been doing to this point has been sort of informal, right? Like informal learning for us. So as Reggie talked about things he was doing in his class, Amanda talks about things that she does with her work. And I started talking about things in my class, and we just kind of discovered that along with like the organic way that this happened, if we could be more intentional, we could actually make a really good topic out of this. And so initially we were inspired because of the benefit it provided us as individuals working in the online space.
Right.
But then we were like, there's a way we could actually intentionally incorporate this into classes to have an impact on the student experience holistically, right? Because informal learning can happen inside the classroom and outside the classroom. And so I know Reggie gave examples of his class and so I have been trying to incorporate this in my class too, and my student satisfaction surveys have gone up. So,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, awesome. Well, that kind of brings me to another question is, like, what is the student perspective? So you say student satisfaction surveys have gone up. Like, what is it that they're saying that they like more?
Absolutely. So I know, for example, in my class, and I won't speak for Reggie or Amanda, but for me specifically, one of the students, this was not in my evaluation. She actually said this to me after the class. She was an exchange student. And one of the things I do is anyone who wants to can come up and show on a map on Google Earth where they're from, right? And they can give you little tours, and it's really cool. Like we got an informal tour of Uzbekistan from an exchange student, and another exchange student was from Belarus. And she was talking about it, and it turned out there were two students in the class whose parents were from Belarus, and they had never been there. So they just connected, and then they became friends, right? So she was saying thank you for that, because as an exchange student, she wasn't sure like how to like find her community. And just by sharing that she was from Belarus and doing a little tour, two students in the class connected with her.
That's really cool.
Yes. And she actually keeps in contact with me too. So I think it's had a lasting effect. So that's just one observation.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. And I think you hit on a really good point, is community building, right? And that's something that, especially in online learning, that we strive for as we build classes, right? How do we build community when everybody is, doing things asynchronously and in different parts of the world and whatnot? And so, these little pieces, these informal learning pieces, can help with that, right? Like, how do you give students the space to have those conversations and, build that community?
Group work.
Yeah. Right. Every student's favorite word right there, group work. Yeah.
Yeah, as an MBA student at UCF, in addition to working there, I can reiterate Brian's sentiments about group work, because even though we do have a project that we're working on together as a group, so we have a goal there, but there's learning that occurs through our natural conversation. We can share our dreams and our hopes and what we're going to do or not, what we're going to get and what we're not going to get from this information. So I take away part of my role entails instructional design and reviewing learning technologies for scaling them. And I can learn just as much as a student and listening to other students about it than I would working with faculty and my colleagues, instructional designers and learning technologists at UCF. We're the professionals, but sometimes you just need the student perspective.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure, because they're coming at it from just such a different angle and life perspective of what's going on. And I teach an in-person course and an online course, and so I use my in-person course sort of as a focus group sometimes, and just sometimes I'll just ask questions, be like, all right, what do you think of this? How can we make this better? What can we do differently? I get really some honest feedback and some surprising feedback too, right? Some stuff that you wouldn't think that would be the case. And I think they I'm going to go back to the reflections. I think they like the reflections. Students like to talk about themselves, but they also want like specifics of like, what am I supposed to be like responding to here? Like, do I need to connect this here? Do I need to talk about the reading, or am I just talking about myself? And so it's interesting, like that open-endedness sometimes is not, at least what I've found, and this, is my personal, it's not always like good for students, but that they need some structure with that too. That helps kind of inform some of the work I do as an instructional designer as well.
I do have a piece of funny feedback regarding the online community building. So I hold water cooler sessions, and they're not mandatory. They're not part of the curriculum. They're super informal. Students can pop in, pop out anytime.
Yeah.
I put my Zoom on the minute I hear a ding, like whatever. And sometimes they're very well attended, sometimes not. I had one student who didn't attend any. And I don't know who the student was because there was feedback, but at my teaching evaluation, they put the water cooler sessions were amazing. Even though I didn't ever attend one, I felt comforting in knowing they were there. So I was like, oh, cool.
That's all right. That's good. So it's good. It's a nice little like safety net there.
Exactly. And that's
yeah.
Being able to give your students a safety net, even if they don't use it, just knowing it's there. It's the safety blanket kind of thing, just knowing that it's there. I have so many instructors that don't make themselves available because, well, the student's just going to turn in their work. I'm going to grade it. I'll give it back to them and then they'll pass the class. That's not what students want anymore. Maybe 20 years ago, but now the students want more engagement. And so that's nice to put that in your course.
Yeah. So speaking of engagement, like how can we engage students in this practice of informal learning? Like what are some techniques or some different strategies that instructors can use to build this into their course?
I can give you an example that I was telling Reggie and Amanda earlier. This is not a strategy I've used, but it was in my online course that I took as a grad student. I was telling them this morning that it was 2 projects you had to do where you had to go out into the community and immerse yourself in a culture that was not your own.
Okay.
So I thought that was so super powerful. Not only did it open my eyes to another culture that I then had to reflect on for the class, but it gave me connections in my own community that I didn't have before.
Right.
And so I thought that was super powerful.
That's cool. I work with an instructor who does something similar as well. That they have a certain kind of experiences to choose from that they need to go immerse themselves in and reflect about it. So I think that's neat as well. Any other thoughts, Reggie, Amanda?
I think one of the things we try to do in some of our classes is try to keep it fresh, as opposed to like every quarter just add something different to the class than what we did before. And so once we do that, we find that students are like really like giving you some things that we hadn't even thought about in terms of like coming up with some ideas for things. And then we'll keep those things written down so that the next quarter we might do a version of it for the next class. Right. So, but students come up with these ideas and we're like, oh, where'd that come from? So
I think immersing them in a new environment also helps. I mean, I like the idea generation component, Reggie, can be very powerful, like putting them together to brainstorm and reflect, maybe about not anything specific, but the service component, like asking them to go and do some volunteer work or service for something related to what they're studying, but more open-ended, something that they can choose or have a conversation about with the person on site or the volunteer work to find out what's needed and what they can bring to the table. That can be very powerful.
And that it gives students ownership too, I think, right? Because you're giving them some autonomy to choose what what direction they want to go. And I think that's awesome too. And then Tracy, I know you're about to say something, so I cut you off.
Oh, no, you didn't at all. No. But I was just going to say something else too. So Amanda, when she was just talking, one of the other things too, I think having students go out into the community does, and I know that I did this with a health disparity lecture that I had to teach, is I had them go out into the community too. And one of the things that does too is it gets them to hear from the people who are directly impacted by something. So for example, we know that Black maternal health is below any other maternal health in the United States. And so for me to do a lecture as a white person it's not as powerful as them going and hearing from that community. So I think that is really important as well.
That's a good point too. It's a way to introduce different perspectives into the course. And even, as the students bring their different perspectives from, all over the country or the world and different cultures, how do they see things and how does that inform their own learning as well? And how can we learn from one another? So I'm a big proponent of having students contribute to the teaching of the course, so to speak, right? Like, how can they bring in content and discuss that content and lead activities or some sort of engagement about the content that they're bringing in and how it relates to the topic of the course and the course outcomes, things like that. So, I love to, especially in a 7.5 week course, which is what we design here at U of A, it's hard to fit in everything, and you're supposed to jam it all in and whatnot, but sometimes it's like, well, let's have the students do a little bit of this work instead of them just ingesting everything. Let's let them go out there and curate some of that as well.
Yeah, definitely, Adam. And I having them curate and then shape the goals of their learning experience. I think that's where you were going with that.
Yeah.
And Tracy's point, oftentimes faculty members are experts in what they know, but that there are other experts, like about, say, the Black community, and then Tracy's example. And so faculty serve as connectors and say, hey, yes, go have this conversation with this person, because they're pointing to like the legitimate authority for that particular topic, and that because of that person's position or experience, they bring a whole lot more validity to the learning experience. So acting as connectors is opening the door for students to get the informal learning experience.
And I think it's crazy too, because we live in a world now where we have access to so much content and, just at our fingertips anywhere, like podcasts and articles and videos and everything. And, not all of it is useful or, accurate or whatnot, but it's still content, right? And it's still out there for people to see and access, and students do it better than anybody, right? Because they live in that world. So let's bring that world. And like you said, let's connect, right? Like, how do we connect these things that maybe we didn't, you wouldn't be able to find, or you wouldn't know how to find? And we can bring that together in a way that I think is really cool. So like anything that I think students can share and discuss and have that set up, I think is really, really powerful. And I think part of it too is like meeting students where they are. So I know, and I don't do this because I don't really, know how it works or anything, but I know a lot of instructors and instructional designers who use like Discord servers as chats, and can set up informal chats with people. I know faculty who have used Slack to, as a way to kind of set up those informal ways for students to connect and talk. And so I think that like providing that opportunity, in an online setting where students have that space to just connect with one another on talking. It doesn't have to be necessarily, related to a specific unit or, or outcome in the course, but that they're like, hey, I found this, I want to share it. Like, I think it's, it's interesting. And I think that's really cool and a great way for learning to happen as well.
Spatial chat in space, like having that available to students during breaks for online courses.
Yeah.
That can generate insight, connections that they may make with each other. Just escape, like just take a break from the learning and dream a little or talk about something unrelated that can then give them their mind a rest to then come back refreshed and more creative.
Yes.
Yeah, we do. We tend to do weekly sync sessions with our students online.
Okay.
And so we always started off with, how are you, or what's new? And so people start telling you things about themselves and what they're doing, which is really kind of interesting to hear too, because you want to, kind of still get to know them as opposed to just the little box on the screen. They start telling you like some real stuff, and then people get interested and start asking questions about it. And some students have been, talking to each other more than as opposed to just in the discussion forum.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So where do you hold these weekly sync sessions? Is just like
Right on Zoom.
via Zoom? Yeah.
Yeah, just
Okay.
on.
That's and it's
They're
open to
they're
every student?
yeah, they're not required, but
Right.
they're optional. But we had
Okay.
over the 10 weeks, we have some students who come every week. We know the ones that are going to come every week. Some just pop in, depending on like what the assignment was for that week, and they just
Mhm.
want to come in and ask some questions. But for the
Okay.
most part, we have like a regular group that shows up every week.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then and so that's kind of like Tracy's water cooler sessions a little bit too. You guys
Yes.
just yeah,
Yeah.
kind of yeah, I like that. I think like we should encourage some more of that and see, see where that goes. No agenda, just fun chats.
Yep.
Right. Show me what what cool recipes you got. What are you making? Share it with everybody. I told you we'd fit the food in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Started to get a little hungry and now I'm thinking about, what snacks I'm gonna have after the podcast. And so, I guess my next question is, how do you we know that there's buy-in for students with this. How do we get buy-in with instructors to have these types of activities and engagement and experiences? Because I know, we work with instructors and not all of them, and but there's some that are just very like, we need to get through this and this during the course of my class, and we don't have time for anything else. And so, what kind of conversations can we have with instructors to help, build these spaces?
That's
That's
a
a
good
tough one. I
question.
know. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I'm going to have to defer to Reggie and Amanda on this one because, so my teaching is I work as an adjunct in another institution, not at
Okay.
Syracuse.
Okay.
And so I'm so far removed from the institution, like as an online instructor. I mean, so I welcome Amanda and Reggie's thoughts on this.
It's a little bit easier in a synchronous class
Right.
because they are there together at the same time.
Right.
And then it's just about having the space. Reggie, I can see you have a thought
No, I
percolating.
was similar to what Tracy said. I teach at another school as well, besides Northwestern, but at the other school, they force the students to do a 30-minute sync session with instructor every week. So you have to do that, and there's points attached to it. So you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared. You have to have an agenda. You have to, know exactly
Okay.
where you're going. But they all show up most times, which is
Right.
actually really interesting. It's not an option. They have to be there if they want those points.
I'll make a suggestion that I think all of you will like, as I'm the only one whose background is not instructional design. I think one of the biggest things that you could do is, as a faculty member, is work with an instructional designer. I mean,
Yes.
I don't, right? I don't work with one currently, but that's also why Amanda and you, Adam, and Megan Kohler from Penn State, like talking with you all and working with you, that's what's helped me.
Well, we appreciate that. Yes, definitely work with your instructional designers. We're awesome. But
There's a really cool icebreaker that Reggie set up for his course. I'll let him speak to that. The icebreaker is with the introducing the origin of your name.
Oh, the origin of your name. Yes, we did that we did that in sessions where it said where'd your name come from, and they give you this, sometimes these really detailed answers about where it came from, or what relative or they were named for, and various other things. And those are like super cool icebreakers to actually start off a class.
That's cool. Yeah. I'm gonna borrow that. That's okay. I like that one.
You can.
Yeah.
And they'll share their favorite recipe as well with you.
Yeah, there we go.
Associated with their name.
I'm all for that. Yes. I really like that. I do an activity in my in-person course too, where I have them make, kind of a makeshift travel brochure for their hometown. And that what I found is that activity, it really like opens them up. So even though the students that, are quiet and the one word answers, and like when you give them an opportunity to talk about their hometown, and even if you say like you have 2 minutes, like they'll go on for 10, 15 minutes. And it's like, okay, cool. Thanks. But one thing I was gonna, kind of say in pivoting to talking about instructors and what they can do, is one thing that I always kind of stress with my instructors is, how are you presenting yourself informally to the students as well. And we have our formal kind of course intro videos or whatnot, and the lecture videos that may be in there, and every those things. But what else can you do? And touching on what Reggie mentioned earlier too, is like keep it fresh, right? What are some informal videos that maybe you can put out there, or announcements, things, images of yourself to show that you're a real person, right? Not just a talking head, and make students feel more comfortable, because they can get that sense of you and your personality when you're standing in front of them in a classroom. But in an online setting, how are we doing that? How are we showing that kind of informal side, and that your personality as a person, not just as an instructor, to the students, to help them feel so I'm a big proponent of that as well, to help open things up.
Yeah, I can believe that spontaneity, that sort of allowing a little bit of messiness in the videos kind of shows them who you really are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll record, a video in our studio that's professional looking and everything, that I can use over and over again in my courses. But if I just want to give like some feedback or whatever, I might record it here with my Disney pins in the background, my Phillies banner, things like that, to show like, okay, this is who I am. This is really where I work, and what I do, and everything. And I'll use that, the one time in the one class, because it's specific to that class too, right?
Right.
Yeah,
I'm on my way to pick up my daughter, and by the way, please
Right.
check this and this.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
you'll need
exactly.
it for the exam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the guy who I co-teach some of my classes with, he decided that let's do this. Let's go out on the street, and we actually went to a few locations for different modules and recorded ourselves talking. He scripted everything, so we're reading the teleprompter as we're someplace, someplace around the city, and we just told them where we were, and then we just went into what the lecture was. But we went to like maybe one afternoon. I think we went to like 5 places, and we just recorded some stuff. And it was like one of the better experiences. I was like, hey, whatever you want to do, I'll do it. And so we were like, how do we get here? So I was like,
Yeah. So one of the things I like to do in my class, and it's been well received, I've been doing it since 2017 when I read about it when I was doing my dissertation research. But I provide video comments or audio comments on the first assignment in every class. And I'm very intentional on saying, I want you to hear my voice so you can hear how constructive I'm being and how I'm approachable, like you can come to me. So this is this. And I'm just very clear about that. And then I go through their first paper, and so I do the video on Zoom, and I record it and then send it to them. And that seems to go over really well with the students. I've definitely had some comments on how much they like it. One student said they kept going back to it because I also address like certain things like APA formatting, for when you write your paper.
Yeah.
Because no one really
fun
likes
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But again, back to what Amanda said too, if I make a mistake, I leave it there. I'm like, that happened.
Right.
I used to try to make them perfect. And then I was like, why am I doing this?
Right. Because like we're not perfect in real life, right?
No.
Like if you make a mistake in a face-to-face class, like you can't say, well, hold on, let me do that again. I mean, you can, but like there's no, they've
It'd
seen
be
it.
so awkward, right?
Right.
But I also sometimes I do stuff in my basement because my office is my basement.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll record things in another room in my house, and I'll tell students, I'm like, sometimes you need a change of scenery just to change your mindset. And so I'm like, I mean, obviously I not private parts of my house, but
Right. Well, believe me, we've seen that too. Like the 2020 home recordings of instructors were wild.
Right.
So yeah. But that's good. Yeah, I love that. The change of scenery, I think, is important too, for students, right? To get your mind thinking about different things, right? Like, see some different things, hear some different sounds, smell some different smells. Hopefully they're not tasting things out in their, the world too much, but yeah, get out there, do things different, and get some different experiences, go around town, see the sights, maybe Reggie, maybe your videos inspired students to get out there and see, some different sites, right? And be like, oh, never been there before, let's check it out. And that's, I think, especially with online courses too, with students who might not be in Tucson and they're not around our campus. It's like, well, how can we, show them little parts of our campus too and make them feel like a greater part of the Arizona community and feel like they're a part of this student community, this greater student community and not just a number on a class roster, but that they can be a part of that. So I love that. Google used to have a really cool like virtual tour program, and then they did away with it, and now I need to get my hands on a 360 camera to like make my own images to do this tour, these tours, which is not as easy as it sounds. But these are the fun things I think about. It's how I get my hands on a 360 camera. Brian, any thoughts on your end about informal learning engagement? Aha. Yes, for our viewers at home, Brian is holding up his cell phone.
You know how much learning every single one of us does when we scroll through TikTok or Facebook, whether you mean to retain what it is you're seeing or not, you actually do retain stuff scrolling through. You learn about what your friends are doing and what your family's doing. You're learning about what some chef is reacting to on somebody else's cooking video or how to plumb in a new sink in your bathroom, all this kind of stuff. I don't think instructors pull their students away from the laptop or the computer enough and say, use your phone, use an app on your phone to go do something. At the start of the pandemic, I was working with an art instructor in a drawing class. How are you going to teach drawing online? I can barely draw a circle. I need my hand to draw a circle. Otherwise, you're going to an egg shape or a trapezoid or something. But we found a really cool app. All of these really awesome, prestigious museums in the world opened up their doors and you could go take a field trip through this app and learn about all these amazing paintings and murals and stuff. And it was just a great thing. So my informal learning is think about how you can use your cell phone or an app on it or your social media connections on your cell phone to help you do what you're trying to do in your online class. There's a public health law and ethics course I'm working on right now. And that instructor is amazing. She updates her slides every single semester. It's wonderful because the laws change every 5 seconds almost. So the fact that she's devoting so much time to doing this, I said, how about this year? What if I give you a break from updating all your slides? Why don't we make your students go out and find the information that you want to tell them? And then she countered by saying, but there's so much misinformation out on the internet. And I said, that's great. Let's teach them how to identify that misinformation by finding it, telling you, the instructor, what's wrong with that information, and then citing the correct information. And she was like, mind blown. This is a wonderful idea. Now she's like, I'm not going to update my lectures. In fact, we're getting rid of all my lectures. The students are going to go find this work because that's what you have to do in real life. You have to go find the answers that you're seeking for and figure out, is what I'm encountering the truth? Is it a version of the truth? Is it way off base? And, in a law and ethics course, I think it's very, very helpful if you're going to go into that field to know the CDC website. That's a trusted website. Bob'sDiseaseOfTheMonth.com at the best site for the correct information. So, that's one way, getting your students to go find what it is instead of just giving it to them. Here, watch this lecture, read these chapters. Go find the information that I want you to learn about. And then we can have an informal discussion about what you found. And maybe you found a different link than Steve, who found a link about something over here. And then Paige found a link about the same kind of topic. Let's all get together and discuss it. And, in a water cooler session, maybe, or in a Discord chat room or something like that. That way, everybody brings something different and we get a whole bunch of different viewpoints talking about those, whatever topics we're wanting to talk about. That's how I want to do kind of informal learning with a nice structure built around it.
I just learned that the act of sharing memes and videos and images with your friends and loved ones is known as pebbling. because
Oh,
penguins, like it's after penguins who bring pebbles to their significant others as penguins. And so I just love that idea of, let's turn the classroom into, one great act of pebbling where they can just share things. So
I love that you brought that up. I have a friend,
Yeah.
She's a professor at another institution, and we communicate all through memes. Like that's how we communicate. It's just sending each other memes back and forth.
You're pebbling back and forth.
Yeah. I mean, but I totally understand how she's feeling. I know what she's going through.
Right. Yeah. It's a great way to communicate, right? And it's a great way to communicate information, feelings, thoughts. Like, I mean, I think, have students create memes that fit with their course, right? It's a relevant thing for them. Find memes, like you were saying, Brian, like all of those things. This is something where it's meeting the students where they are, and to a certain extent us too, like we all do it.
And I love the information literacy component you kind of incorporated into that example with, okay, what's a valid source? What's a trusted source? Because that's something that's very much needed. And then to have your perspective on it, because perspectives are valid too. But to know that there are some sources that are more truthful than others.
I would just also like to point out that we're all engaging in informal learning here too, because I'm taking notes. So.
I was just about to say the same thing. I was like, this has been informal learning for all of us, and like podcasts as well are like informal learning, right? And what do we listen to, and what do we consume as well, that that may be related to our jobs or careers or fields of study, or maybe are just fun, right? I listen to a Survivor podcast every week during when Survivor airs. And so that's fun for me because it gives a different perspective and sometimes validates my own perspective on the players, right? And I'm like, yes, somebody else is thinking this just like me. And so
now my question is, how can you informally add Survivor to your classes that you teach?
Oh man, that's
you
challenge
definitely
accepted.
can.
You can.
Yeah. We do the life raft one from the Navy, where students have to work together they try to survive on their own, and then they have to work in a group, and we see who survives.
And they have the like different items that they have to like
and they have to rank them. The students love it, and I do it with both grad and undergrad, and both of them really appreciate it.
Although I have a version where they're on the moon. And they have to survive on the moon. Yeah.
That's probably a good idea, because once you do the Navy one once, I think it's Navy, then they know the answers, and
right.
you got to keep switching it up.
But yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways. I presented a little session at OLC last year about bringing pop culture into your courses and whatnot. And so like, I think for me, that's, my informal kind of learning as well, right? Is bringing that because that's an aspect of my personality. That's what I enjoy. And it helps maybe have the students kind of bring that up as well. And what are their pop culture? And I learn from them, like, because I'm stuck in the 90s when it comes to music. So, I need my students to help inform me. My Spotify right now is either 90s or toddler music. So there's nothing in between. But yeah, I think that's always fun to bring those kind of fun aspects into courses and let students have fun with that.
Yeah, I think the art, the music, the pop culture, all that speaks to what's happening socially now. Yeah. And as Tracy would explain, it's informal learning has a lot to do with social emotional development. Even the playing games, the goal may not be around learning at all, but the fact that you're my son, who loves to play with his friends, e-games all the time, he is so much more verbal, and he uses feeling words. I mean, I thought I taught him that, but he doesn't use it with me. But I do hear it come out during the games, and he's learning how to express himself and work together as a team to reach a goal. So there's something to be said about that. It's not just, it is play, but there's teamwork involved.
Yeah.
And that's a durable skill.
Yeah. There's important outcomes that come out of that play.
Some people have made an entire living out of that as recreational therapists.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's, play is fun. We all like to play, and
Yes.
so how do we incorporate that and more? And so I think that's a fun challenge as well for all of us. Let's be more playful. The world needs more playfulness, right?
I would agree.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you all for this informal learning experience and chatting with us about, this fun topic and how we can incorporate it into our courses and into our line of work, and also, what it means to do it, not just professionally but personally as well. Like, how do we learn from one another informally, and how do we share and communicate and collaborate and all that fun stuff. And so I'm grateful that you all took a little bit of time out of your days to come chat with us, and thank you. And hopefully we'll continue this chat at, in other ways, future conferences, or wherever we see each other on the interwebs.
I'll start sending you memes.
Excellent. I will reciprocate. So, yeah.
I'll start pebbling with you.
I love it. Yes, we'll just little pebbling circle here.
She means
Awesome.
it. So.
Yeah. I love it. I'm all for it. Let's do it. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all very much again. And
thank you for the invitation.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, anytime. If you all ever have any other topics you want to come on and talk with us about, we're happy to have you as guests anytime, and we'll talk about anything. So, and for those listening, thank you all for rejoining us on the podcast, and stay tuned for episode 4 of season 3 when that comes out in a month or so. So thank you all.
The Futures of Digital Learning podcast is a production of the University of Arizona University Center for Assessment, Teaching, and Technology. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas you'd like to share with our office, go to the Contact Us link on our website, ucatt.arizona.edu.